How many times have you heard this advice? Praise in public, criticize in private. It's everywhere. Leadership books, corporate seminars, LinkedIn influencers, your Aunt B. It sounds smart, it sounds kind, it sounds emotionally intelligent. But today we're going to dismantle it. Not because it's completely wrong, but because it's incomplete. And incomplete leadership advice creates weak cultures.
Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Welcome to Leadership Mythbusters, where we take popular leadership cliches and replace them with evidence-based real-world practice. Ramsey!
I'm so excited. I love the idea of Mythbusters, and once attended a Comic-Con where one of the Mythbusters was the MC in charge of the parade.
The fact that there was
Sorry,
a Comic-Con parade. Yeah.
It is incredible. What's the guy, Winslow, who does all the sound effects on the Police Academy movies?
Yes.
He was the guest of honor or whatever, and it was going down the streets of Atlanta, and you could hear the sirens, the police announcing the parade coming, and it's a huge parade. I mean, it lasted forever, and it was that dude going just into a microphone. It was amazing. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, except the fact that some might publicly shame me for bringing up that I went to a Comic-Con. And public shaming happens a lot, Mike. I'm going to be honest with you. Let me pitch it to you this way. I have been present at a sales manager's sales tower when he pages every salesperson to the sales tower, and in front of customers in the showroom and in front of all the peers, he blesses out a guy who keeps making a mistake. And so here's I think the origin of why this concept even exists of praise in public, criticize in private. Public humiliation destroys trust, right? If you're embarrassed, you shut down. And there's a lot of research on that, right? We talk about psychological safety today. If somebody feels attacked, if they feel shamed, they don't learn as well. Their performance goes downhill. Productivity drops. So we are taught you need to protect dignity by correcting people in private. And so I think we're making a little bit of an argument here today. Noble idea. But when that advice becomes a rule instead of a principle to go by, it stops serving the team. What's wrong with this as a rule?
Well, think about how we see managers use this, and we'll start on the praise side of things. So praise in public, if it's vague, which we often see, it
Yes.
serves no purpose, and it doesn't reinforce the standards.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen somebody, manager start the meeting, he's got his team there, and he's like, great
Yep.
job last month, fantastic work. And everybody applauds, yay, right?
Yep.
But what exactly was good?
Yeah.
What were the
Who did it?
Yeah, who did it? What did they do? And how did it align with the standards, the processes that we've been talking about and training on and working on all this time? And so there's this perfect opportunity to reinforce all the good stuff that was done so that it gets repeated. So making the feedback specific, meaningful, and consistent. And by consistent, we mean where it happens on a regular basis. People who get, the research tells us people who gets that kind of feedback weekly, not daily, right? We hear managers talk, everybody wants to be recognized all the time. No, in this research, weekly specific praise led employees to be 4 times more engaged in the workplace.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not generic praise, it's specific positive feedback. And this goes all the way back to old B.F. Skinner and the bell and the dog and all that. The idea that what gets recognized gets repeated. And it's that simple. So, and we see this all the time. Great job, fantastic work, but it doesn't mean anything. Going into something as specific as fantastic job. That was a very difficult customer. You stuck to your talking points. You were able to get them to the next step in the process. That's exactly what we're looking for. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I can replicate that in future conversations.
Yeah, I could not agree more with this. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, how, I had a dealership years ago that they had graffiti in the bathroom. They had jokes written to each other on the whiteboard. They would say the phrase that the owner said, that the dealer said, that was just empty praise. And they knew it. They knew it. They knew that it was empty. And so nobody ever changed any behavior on what he wanted to see improve for the store when he would give that generic praise. I had another store years ago. There was a big quarterly bonus that they were getting access to from the manufacturer. And service had done, an incredible job at maintaining a CSI score that they needed for this target to hit. And I realized when I walked in for my quarterly visit that I was the first person to tell them what they had done. And at the end of the meeting, the dealer said, "Yeah, everybody, great job." And I remember him sticking up his half thumb, like he didn't even give a full thumbs up. It was just like sort of the half thumb. And that was it. And he walked out of the room. I realized that I had just witnessed the one and only moment of praise that they were going to get about this whole thing. But your version is not about these big, huge accomplishments. It's on a weekly basis, and we've talked about this, AID, action, impact, desire for the future. The way you stuck to the sales process, the way you stuck to your selling points. Notice how eventually that did communicate to the customer the value of this vehicle. Man, keep that up, right? Action, the impact it had, desire for the future. So this actually makes a ton of sense. Let's not be vague. Let's be as specific as we can. So I get that. What else is wrong with this whole praise in public, criticize in private thing?
Well, like I said, if it becomes exclusive to this is the only way we're going to do it, that's where the incomplete comes in. So the idea of criticize in private only can kill accountability. So if this is the key to this, if the standards are violated publicly and you only correct privately, everybody notices. Like the team is on to that. So the idea that you're in a meeting, the meeting starts at 9:00. One of your team members walks in at 9:07, and you as the leader say nothing. Well, the new standard for showing up at the meeting is now 9:07.
Oh, that's right.
It goes back to something we talk about a lot. You don't get what you expect, you get what you allow.
Yep.
We see this all the time, right? You go into a dealership and they're like, what's the expectation for salespeople here? Well, the expectation is you have to sell 10 cars a month in order to work here. Fantastic. That's the expectation. How many people do you have who've long-term consistently not done that? Well, I've got 3. They're all selling 4 cars a month. All right. So your true expectation is 4. No, it says, I've repeated it. I've told them 10.
Yep.
Right. But you allow 4. And now that becomes the standard. So what is the one author calls it? Norm drift. Right. The norms, the expectations just drift down to the level that it seems like you're allowing.
And Norm often drifted down to Cheers, the bar in that famous sitcom. Anyway,
yes, so also a high performer.
Right.
Yeah, that we're looking for. Not so much.
In Milk-Bone underwear. Let me see if I follow this, because I think, it makes sense to me. Culture's what you allow. Your accountability is out the window if you are not addressing these issues with these people. And I think, so I can hear somebody listening saying, the flip side here is, yeah, but if you start correcting them in public, now they're not safe anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? That there's a safety issue. And so I think, I don't know that we've ever talked about the Fearless Organization and Amy Edmondson, but the idea that high performing teams do openly discuss mistakes. We've definitely talked about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and one of those is accountability. But so what's we've got a note here in our outline for this episode. Psychological safety isn't fragility. How do you take that?
The idea that, and Lencioni says it in the 5 dysfunctions of a team, the ultimate teams are not conflict avoidant, they're conflict capable.
Yep.
They can have difficult conversations with each other. The manager can have difficult conversations, and people see it as a learning opportunity, as a growth opportunity, and that kind of feedback is encouraged. And
Right.
so if you have an organization that crumbles under, what they call respectful, or we call it respect-based correction or respect-based coaching, then you don't have a high-performing team. You don't even have safety. You just have fragility, and you have avoidance. So nobody, how many times do we go into an organization it's like everybody knows what the problem is,
Yep.
but we can't get together even in a one-on-one situation and talk about it. And so
Yeah.
the problem just persists and lingers, and it erodes, performance. It erodes confidence. It erodes trust. So the idea here is that there are times where feedback should be, criticism, constructive feedback should be private, but there are times when the public standard needs to be reinforced. And so let's talk about this is the subtle difference in this. So you publicly reinforce behaviors that clarify expectations and correct process breakdowns without attacking identity. So we're not going to go after one person in front of everybody, but we are going to restate the standard and the norm that is expected, and we can do that in front of the group, and we should do that in front of the group. We privately coach, right? Man, it seems like I'm beeping. We privately coach patterns around, growth, development, personal growth, things specifically that individual needs to change that are specific to that individual. And that should absolutely happen in that private one-on-one conversation. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Public and private is about behaviors, outcomes of individuals. It's not about the individual's worth as a human being or an employee. There's trust there, right? And we're back to talking about the 5 dysfunctions of a team to some degree, right? Because if I trust that everybody here will let me be real about what's going on with my work performance, for instance, then that means we can have some conflict on it because I know we're all going to be doing it. We're all going to be able to talk back and forth about our performance and what we're trying to achieve. And remember the rest of those 5 behaviors, once you're able to do that, right? Once there's trust there that allows you to have that kind of conflict, because it is conflict, right? I'm pointing out something that's not going well. Now I can commit to higher behaviors. I can then be held accountable to higher behaviors, and I'll then get results that spill out of those higher behaviors. So we're dancing around a little bit here, the fact that there would obviously be trust as a foundation for us to even be able to have this discussion. But yeah, public, we talk about our standards. We absolutely do. Privately, we deal with the personal stuff, but publicly, we're gonna talk about the standards.
Oh yeah, definitely. So let's take our example of the person showing up late for the meeting. So meeting, meeting begins at 9. They show up at 9:07, and it's perfectly acceptable when that person walks in to say, this meeting always begins at 9:00. And that's it, right? I've not pointed at you, I've not called you out directly, but everybody knows the standard, and everybody knows that the behavior that just happened wasn't acceptable.
Yep.
And if you really want to double down on it, as the meeting adjourns, before everybody's left, you ask the person who came in late to stay behind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, can you stick around a minute? I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, like they do in school when somebody gets paged over the intercom. Will Mike come to the office? The entire building. Ooh, he's in trouble. So, and that's why they did it that way, right? So, okay, this person violated a norm. There's going to be a private conversation, but we all kind of know what the norm was and what the violation was. And so you've reinforced the standard.
Well, so let me say, and that's done assuming the leader is also following the standard and holding himself to the same level of accountability and owning it in public. And it's also assuming that they're communicating care of the individual, right? Like, so it's not a follow-up with them where you berate them. It's a follow-up with them where you're saying something like, hey, what's going on that kept you from being at the meeting at 9? What is there something we need to talk about, right?
Yeah, that conversation needs to be what we call the coach approach.
Yeah.
Right. I approach it with curiosity. What's going on in your life that keeps, that makes it very difficult for you to get here, for the 9 o'clock meeting?
Yep.
What can I do to support you in that?
Yep.
And that can evolve. If it continues and it doesn't get better, then it graduates to a more direct conversation. One of the ways we did this previously, when the internet was new and young, and the idea of we would bring up the CRM, and we had specific steps that salespeople were supposed to do when replying to a customer, and we'd bring it up, and everybody in the room could see it, and the way we did it with psychological safety, but still reinforced the expectation, was we would ask the salesperson who was in the interaction to dissect it first. Mm-hmm. What did you do well in communicating with this customer? What would you do differently next time? And a lot of times they would say, yeah, I didn't follow this step where I was supposed to text them back, or I didn't do this part of the process or whatever. And so now it's, instead of us jumping on them, right, it created an environment where I got to go first. I got to say, yeah, that's the expectation. I didn't follow it. I definitely need to get back on that as I move forward. And so it was just a nice way to, once again, publicly state the standard, but allow that person to do that. And if they couldn't figure it out, then the group would add, okay, there's a step that could have been done here, and that's one of the things that we've been training and working on and have as an expectation.
All right, so to close us out here, I mean, hopefully you're getting the message here that this isn't about, should this be a private thing versus a public thing. We're really saying, yeah, of course, develop people privately, but the goal of the public stuff is not the correction of the individual, but reinforcing the culture. It's about reinforcing the standards. So,
and I think we'll put in here our disclaimer about sarcasm.
Yep.
So
I think that's fair.
Yeah, the person comes in the meeting at 9 o'clock. It's perfectly fine to restate. These meetings on every Monday through Friday begin at 9 o'clock. Versus the sarcastic approach of, oh, look who decided to join us. Right. We're not talking about that. So nice of you to grace us with your presence. Hope we didn't start this meeting too early for you.
Right.
Yeah, here's our good friend who doesn't own an alarm clock. Welcome to the meeting. Right, we've heard them all. Don't go there. Right, restate the standard. Move on to this is not about humiliation. This is about restating the standard, getting back to business, because you don't want to waste the people's time, your team members who were there on time, who are doing the things that you've expected of them. So be respectful of their time and don't create a situation where somebody is belittled or demeaned or has their dignity impugned by you from the front of the room.
Yeah. Well, let me end us with a challenge here. Before your next team meeting, first off, like, subscribe, and rate and review this podcast. Second off, ask yourself a few questions. First is, What behavior do I want replicated? What behavior do I want replicated? Second question, what standard needs visible reinforcement? Needs that public reinforcement? What standard needs visible reinforcement? And third, who needs private coaching? Let me answer that third question for you. They all do. All of them. You have to help them. Help your people. That's your job. And let us know how we can do anything to help you do that. Mike, anything for you?
No, I think the idea that clarity builds performance, standards build trust, and courage builds culture. And all of that is within the scope of your control as the leader. So go make it happen, guys.
And there you have it, another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.